Elmarie Wood is an award-winning psychological horror author and screenwriter. She won the Golden Stake Award for her novel, The Promise Keeper. Her screenplays have won Best Horror, Best Afrofuturism Horror Sci-Fi, and Best Short Screenplay Awards at several film festivals. Learn more about Elmarie Wood at www.elmariewood.com, and I'll post that. Take it away, Marie.
Thank you so much. Well, today I'll be reading from The Realm, which is book 1 of the Realm trilogy. Book 3 actually comes out later this year in October. So let's start from the beginning. Chapter 1. It didn't happen the way they said it would. No angels came to greet him. No bright light funneled a path through the darkness. No relatives called to him from the beyond. He didn't feel warmth, acceptance, or love. He felt emptiness. He saw nothing in the moments before death, just an impenetrable darkness that crowded his vision, like oil spreading in water, encroaching on the faces of his son and daughter-in-law, blackening them, obliterating them. He could hear them after his eyes dimmed, standing open and blind like black holes. His tear ducts dried up as his son cried over him. The sound of Doug's grief, the guttural moans roiling and meshing with his pleas, his barters with God to save his father, were more than Patrick could take. Trying but failing to lift his hand from his side and stroke his son's head, Patrick silently prayed that his hearing would dissipate as quickly as his sight had. Patrick could only imagine what Doug and Chris were seeing as his body broke down in front of them. Images of eyes ruined by broken capillaries, filled with blood, his slack mouth allowing a discolored tongue to peek through and tortured his mind. He struggled for every breath now, death's grip holding fast and firm. The thought of the kids seeing him fight for air, his face a twisted mass of pain and effort, upset him more than he thought it would. Death was not pretty. Doug moaned and Chris cried while Patrick's eyes grew drier and his skin grew paler. He thought it would never end, the display, the sick, cruel game Death was playing. That they should witness it, that he should have to hear the calmness his son usually displayed crumble and fall away was torture, if ever there was a definition of the word. The devil, then, it was his work, after all, he supposed. He was on his way to hell, and this was but a taste of what was to come. And then there was silence, utter silence. The sound of his son's anguish was gone, mercifully. The hum of the respirator, the clicking of the rosary beads the man in the next bed held, the squeak of the rubber soles on the sanitized floor as the nurses and doctors hurried to his side, all sound had disappeared. He wondered what would go next. His memory? He quizzed himself just to see if it was already gone. Oh, what's my name? Patrick Richardson. How old am I? 59. Was is more like it, he corrected himself. After all, he was dead. Dead, gone, finished. Patrick stood in the black silence, confused and unbelievably sad. He was dead. He would never see the baby that Chris was carrying, his first grandchild. He wouldn't ever watch another boxing match with his son and friends over beer and pizza. He wouldn't get the chance to watch the waves break on the shore from a beach in the Caribbean because he was dead. And death was dark, impenetrably so. But how did this happen? He asked aloud, using a mouth he could no longer feel. He thought back to that morning when he was taking out the garbage. He could remember walking to the back of his house and getting out the garbage can. The damned cat had gotten into it again. The little stray he left food and water for had knocked the top off the can, torn through the garbage bag, and gotten to the trash inside. The little monster made a hell of a mess, too, strewing soggy newspaper, chicken bones, orange juice cartons all over the brick patio. Patrick remembered cursing out loud and casting his eyes around the backyard looking for the cat. He remembered turning back to the bowl he'd left out the night before and finding it full of food. That's what she was supposed to eat, damn it, he said as he bent down to clean up the mess. On his way back to the house to get another garbage bag, a piece of the dream he had the night before came back to him. It hung in front of his eyes like a transparency over real life, framing everything with the hazy film of familiarity, all soft edges and anticipation. Deja vu. As usual, after those dreams, the dark ones that made him wonder if he was there, really there, walking, talking, living within them, he wondered if he was the character whose face the audience never sees. The memory was faint, as it always was the morning after, but he knew what happened next. This time, the scene was identical to his dream. There was usually something askew, some crucial piece off center, but this time, nothing was out of place. He knew he would turn away from the door instead of going inside to get the garbage bag. He knew he would squint from the sun when he did, and that he would place his hands above his eyes, shading them like a visor. He knew it just as well as he knew his name, for as easily as that knowledge came, it dragged heavy fear and worry in its wake. He obliged. It wasn't like he had a choice. Patrick heard the shriek coming from next door, pulling him away from the dream world and into the land of the living with a jolt. It came from Mary Williams's house, an old lady who lived alone despite her diminished vision and limited use of her legs. She got along fine, though. She cooked her own meals, cleaned her own house. She hardly left anything for the day nurse to do. Spunky old girl, Patrick remembered thinking. I hope I'm as with it as she is when I get to be that old. Something cold took up residence in his stomach, grafting itself to his insides and pulsating there. The shrieking voice didn't sound like Mary's, though. It sounded younger, more vibrant, less gravelly, and weathered with age. It was probably the day nurse Jennifer with a sigh. With a sigh, Patrick detoured from his front door, crossing the lawn to Mount Mary's front steps. The old girl might have kicked the bucket, he thought, as he approached the door. He felt genuinely saddened by the idea. The dream was dissipating, and Patrick was happy about that. Sure, he could still feel it playing along the edges of his consciousness, enticing him to come back and play, but it would lose this time and evermore. Patrick knocked on the door and called out to Jennifer, Mary's nurse, announcing himself. The door was ajar, and the force of his knuckles pushed it open. Patrick walked inside hesitantly, calling for Jennifer all the while, but there was no response. He called for Mary then, wondering if something had happened to the girl instead. Nothing. 2 steps into the foyer, and Patrick could see into the living room and dining room on the opposite side of the hallway. There was no one in sight. Patrick remembered thinking he should leave, thinking that he had been hearing things. But why didn't they answer? And why was the front door open? That Jennifer's car was in the driveway didn't register in his mind when it happened, but Patrick could remember it as clear as day as he recounted it. If he could do it all over again, he would do the same thing. He was sure of it. What happened was just meant to be. I think I have to stop here. I think I'm running up against time. If you're interested to know what happens with Patrick, because unfortunately, poor Patrick, you find out pretty quickly, check out my new series. Thank you.